What do you keep when they take everything? I used to think love looked like a porch light. Warm, constant, always left on for someone coming home. But that night, it just buzzed quietly in the dark. He wasn't coming back, not because he walked away, but because he signed the deed, without a word, without my name. He took the house, the place we painted together, the garden we filled with marigolds and mailboxes. I stood there barefoot, holding a key that meant nothing now. The lock had already been changed. Some men trade memories for square footage. He did it with one quiet signature and called it a clean break. Funny how erasure doesn't always need a goodbye. But I didn't turn the light off. Not for him. Not anymore. Just in case someone else out there still believed in lights that don't lie. It didn't begin with a fight. It began with a compliment. A harmless, smiling thing. Mrs. Kaufman leaned over her fence, sun hat tilted, arms dusted with flour. I heard Trevor's taking over the house. Good for you both, dear. Must feel like a relief. I stood there, still holding the pruning shears, the hedge half trimmed. The world half made sense. She kept chatting. Saw Frank at Sunday service. Said the deed transfer went smooth. And then, like it was nothing. You raised that boy right. I nodded, or thought I did. But my hand stayed still, wrapped around the same branch. That evening, I folded towels I'd already folded once. Boiled water I didn't need. Checked the pantry 3 times before realizing I wasn't looking for anything at all. Frank sat in his usual chair, remote balanced on his belly. He laughed at something on the news. Trevor came in later, kissed my cheek like always, then disappeared into the garage. They were calm. I was something else. I watched Frank, same way I might study a photograph, noticing what I'd missed the first time. And suddenly, there it was. The 1,000 little ways he'd said it before. This is my house. My roof, my rules. Let me handle it. I had nodded. I had let him. Because love, I thought, meant not questioning the parts you didn't understand. Once, years ago, I'd asked gently, should we add my name to the deed? He chuckled. It's just paper. We know what's ours. Turns out, he did. And so did Trevor. They had filed the paperwork without a word. Signed a future that didn't include me in ink. Not out of malice, just out of habit. I remembered a different signature. It was on a napkin. Our 2nd year of marriage. I had embroidered our initials on the corners, F and L. We used them every Sunday for dinner, folded neatly beside the wine glasses. One day, Trevor spilled grape juice on his. I stitched over the stain with a little sun. He called it his lucky napkin. It's funny, we sign papers to make things official, but it's the stains we remember, the marks we live with. So when I saw my name missing, it wasn't surprise. It was silence. The heavy kind. I was still making dinners, still scrubbing the tile grout with a toothbrush, still whispering, be safe, when they left. But I was no longer written in. That night, we sat down to roast chicken. Frank poured Trevor a glass of wine. I passed the pepper like I always did. No one looked at me. The house was full of voices, but mine wasn't among them. I realized something I hadn't dared ask before. Maybe I had taught them how to forget me. The house still smelled like lemon oil, but it didn't recognize me anymore. I moved through it like I was walking inside someone else's memory. Everything I had put in place still sat where I left it. The tablecloth folded just so. The shelf lined with the ceramic birds I collected from road trips. But something had shifted. They hadn't asked me to leave, but I had already started disappearing. That morning, I baked almond cookies. Trevor used to call them cloud coins. I wrote a little note. For you, just like when you were 10. I left them on the counter. He walked past them twice, didn't touch them, didn't see the note. They were still there at bedtime, soft, cold, forgotten. That night, he asked if I had seen his multivitamins. I pointed to the medicine drawer. He pulled out the bottle, held it up, and said, "You won't need these after the move, right?" He didn't say it with cruelty. He said it like it was obvious, like he knew something I hadn't yet admitted to myself. I stood at the sink that night with my hands in hot water. The dishes were clean, but I kept scrubbing. One spoon, over and over. It gave my hands something to do while my heart sat still. I don't think Frank noticed I'd stopped watching TV with them. I started going to bed early. Sat in the sewing room longer than I needed. Some nights, I just watched the wall. One afternoon, I opened Trevor's old closet. It still had his science fair posters, his shoes with the laces missing, and on the shelf, the napkin, the one with the stitched sun. I picked it up like it was glass, held it to my chest. He had kept it. Through dorm rooms, through jobs, through women, and still, he had signed my name away. It wasn't malice. It was omission, a kind of forgetting that happens in slow layers. One assumption at a time. I climbed up to the attic that evening, not looking for anything, but needing to see what still had my handwriting on it. In the corner, under a blanket, was the first floor plan, drawn years ago. Edges curled, ink fading. Next to the kitchen, I'd written, "Don't move the light. L faces east." I had written that for the electrician, but now it looked like a message to myself. L faces east. I laughed. Then I didn't. I sat there a while, map in lap, tracing the pencil lines with my finger. The crooked dining room, the cabinet that never closed all the way, the window I measured twice. None of it was perfect, but it had my mark. Trevor and Frank talked more each day. Plans for a new deck, removing the old rosebush, painting over the pantry door. They moved through the house like they were alone, and I moved like the walls. I was still holding it up, but I was no longer seen. Even the chair I always sat in stopped warming when I left it. I wasn't snooping. I was just clearing the counter. Trevor had left his usual trail: backpack, jacket, a crumpled napkin with cream cheese on it, and a paper. It looked official. I unfolded it absent-mindedly. The word "quitclaim" sat at the top in bold. I paused. It had our address. It had Frank's name, Trevor's name. Mine wasn't there. I blinked, read it again, then again. It wasn't a mistake. Frank had signed the house over to Trevor. That was the moment I knew something had shifted long before I noticed. I put the paper down, stood there in the kitchen, spoon still dripping from stirring lentil soup. The house was warm, but I felt cold. That evening, they had been laughing in the den. I thought, how nice, they were bonding again. Turns out, they were making decisions I wasn't part of. About the house I kept standing. For years, I thought love was shown through presents, through casseroles, clean linens, patched up screens. But maybe I'd confused contribution with recognition. I opened the side drawer in the hallway and took out something I hadn't touched in years, a folded sheet of yellowed graph paper. I had drawn it when we decided to fix the plumbing ourselves. It wasn't perfect, just my handwriting, sketches of walls, notes like drippy under sink. Don't remove this nail. Ceiling might shift. I had drawn where the sun hit in the morning, where we spilled red paint and never quite covered it. That was my map of this place, my claim. Not a deed, but something deeper. And I remembered. Trevor was 5, running around with a plastic hammer. I let him help measure the kitchen. He drew a crooked smiley face in the margin. It was still there. I sat down and held both papers. The deed that removed me, and the map that remembered me. Frank had always said, "It's my house. I bought it." But I built it. I built warmth into the walls. I built comfort into the corners. And now, it was being passed along, like I never lived here at all. I could have called a lawyer. I could have made a scene. But some battles only leave bruises. Instead, I folded the deed, put it under the fruit bowl, and rolled up my map. Then I walked to the bedroom, pulled out a ribbon from the sewing kit, tied it gently around the paper. That was what I would take. Not the deed, not the couch or the cutlery, just the part that held my hands. I packed light, a shawl, the ceramic spoon rest I bought from a roadside vendor in Arizona, and a note. I left it on the kitchen counter, under the deed. It said, "This house remembers me, but will it forgive you?" I didn't expect anyone to understand right away. But maybe one day, they would. I stepped outside. The porch creaked under my weight, same way it had every fall when I put up the wreath. I looked back once. There was still a nail behind the pantry where I had hung the broom. No one ever fixed it, even after it cracked the drywall. I hammered it in during a storm, barefoot and angry. That nail was mine. So was the chipped tile under the sink, and the paint line Trevor made too low in his room, and the coffee stain on the rug that Frank never saw. They could change the names on paper, but they couldn't erase the fingerprints. I carried my map like it was the deed, because in a way, it was. It remembered. It forgave. It spoke when no one else did. I didn't scream, didn't show up at the courthouse, didn't ask him why. That part of the house, the part that held answers, was already empty. Instead, I packed one box. No photos, no rings, only what I built. The floor plan I'd drawn years ago, back when we still called it ours. And the spare key, taped behind the cabinet where he never looked. I mailed the key, not to him, to a local history museum, with a note. This unlocked a house I no longer live in, but someone should remember the hands that built it. Then I opened the drawer with the old papers, the deed, the bank letters, the insurance files, and one yellow envelope, sealed. I had written it the day we closed on the home, a future letter to myself. I slid the new papers inside, signed what needed signing, took his name off where it no longer belonged. Not out of anger, but to make room for my own. Then I called a lawyer, asked her to help me create something new. Not a will, but a trust. For women like me, who gave too much and stayed too long, but still chose to walk. We named it the Blueprint Fund. Quiet money for silent women, to redraw what was taken from them. I didn't send him a notice, didn't need a reaction. Some truths don't need witnesses, only air. That evening, I turned off the porch light. The bulb flickered once, then went out. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was being left in the dark. I was choosing it, because the morning would be mine. The next morning, I sat where the sun touched the porch first. Not my porch, not yet, but no one stopped the light from coming in. A half-dug garden bed lay in front of me. The shovel still leaned against the fence, like someone paused and never came back. I placed my old wooden chair beside it, the only thing I brought from the house. The rest, I let go. I laid the blueprint across my lap. The paper was soft in places, folded in others. It wasn't a floor plan. It was a sketch of air and space and choice. A window facing east. A room with no locks. A place that didn't ask me to disappear to fit. As the light rose, it reached the corners of the page, almost like it had waited all night to remind me where the lines were. That's when I heard the wheels. A scooter zipping past the gate. The little girl from 3 doors down. The one who used to wave when I walked Ellie home. She didn't know my name, but she shouted, "Hi, neighbor!" And that word I hadn't heard in years. Her mother raised a hand from the mailbox. No pity, no whispering, just welcome. I didn't wave back right away. I looked down at my hands, no longer clutching what was taken, just holding the page and the handle of my chair and the dirt below. Then I did something I hadn't done since the day the deed was changed. I exhaled fully, because maybe the house was never mine to keep. But this breath, this space, this morning was. And maybe home isn't what we build for others to see. Maybe it's what we claim quietly when no one's watching, when no one's taking, when the door we open leads back to ourselves. Some lights are never meant for the ones who left. They're for the ones still finding their way back. Or maybe just for you, when the world goes quiet and all you have is your own breath and the small courage to begin again. If this story touched something quiet in you, feel free to share it or write back, only if your heart feels like it. I still believe in lights that stay on, even when no one's knocking.